rain poured down on the subway platform as Jake Morrison held his 4-year-old daughter Emma close, both of them soaked from their rush to catch the evening train. At 32, Jake had been a single father for 2 years, working construction, jobs when he could find them and stretching every dollar to make sure Emma had what she needed. Today had been particularly difficult as his latest job had ended unexpectedly, and his last $10 was all that stood between them and complete destitution. As they waited for the train, Jake noticed a woman standing nearby who seemed to be in distress. She appeared to be in her early 30s with blonde hair and professional attire that had been soaked by the sudden downpour. What caught Jake's attention, however, was not her appearance but her obvious frustration as she searched through her purse with increasing desperation. "Daddy, why does that lady look upset?" Emma asked in the innocent way that children notice everything. Jake watched as the woman checked every pocket of her leather jacket and searched through her purse again. When the train arrived and she approached the turnstile, Jake overheard her conversation with the station attendant. "I am so sorry, but I seem to have left my wallet at the office," she was saying. "Is there any way I can pay you back tomorrow? I really need to get home." The attendant, who had clearly heard similar stories many times before, shook his head with practiced indifference. "No exceptions, lady. No fare, no ride." Jake looked at this woman who was clearly having one of those days when everything goes wrong, and felt something stir in his chest. He recognized the particular desperation of someone who needed help but was too proud to ask for it directly. Without thinking too hard about his own situation, Jake approached the turnstile. "Excuse me," he said to the woman. "I could not help but overhear. Would you let me pay your fare?" The woman turned to look at him with surprise, taking in his work, clothes, and the little girl in his arms. "That is very kind of you, but I could not ask you to do that." "You are not asking," Jake replied with a gentle smile. "I am offering. We all have days when we need a little help." He pulled out his last $10 bill and handed it to the attendant, knowing that this would mean he and Emma would have to walk the 3 miles home in the rain, since they would no longer have money for their own fare. The woman stared at the bill in disbelief. "Sir, I cannot let you do this. You have a child to think about." "Which is exactly why I want to do it," Jake replied. "I want Emma to see that we help people when we can, especially when they need it most." Emma, who had been watching this exchange, with the serious attention that children give to adult interactions, suddenly spoke up. "Daddy, you can have my piggy bank money for the train home." Jake felt his heart catch at his daughter's generous offer, even though he knew her piggy bank contained maybe $2 in coins. "That is very sweet, sweetheart. But we will be fine." The woman looked at this father and daughter who were willing to sacrifice their own comfort to help a stranger, and felt something shift inside her chest. "What are your names?" she asked softly. "I am Jake Morrison, and this is my daughter Emma," Jake replied. "And you do not need to worry about paying me back. Just pass the kindness along when you get the chance." "I am Victoria Chen," she replied, accepting the fare with obvious reluctance. "And I promise you I will find a way to repay this kindness." As they rode the train together, Victoria found herself drawn into conversation with Jake and Emma. She learned that Jake was between construction jobs, that Emma attended a daycare center that he could barely afford, and that they lived in a small apartment where Emma's bedroom was actually a corner of the living room, separated by a curtain. Jake had hung for privacy. "What kind of work do you do, Miss Victoria?" Emma asked with the directness that only children possess. Victoria hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I run a company that builds things, kind of like what your daddy does, but with computers instead of hammers." Jake smiled at her simplified explanation. "That sounds like important work." "It pays well," Victoria admitted, "but I sometimes wonder if it matters as much as the work people like you do. You build things that people actually live and work in." When they reached Victoria's stop, she turned to Jake with obvious reluctance to end their conversation. "Jake, I know you said I do not need to pay you back, but I would like to do something for you and Emma. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee tomorrow? I have an idea I would like to discuss with you." Jake looked at this woman who seemed genuinely interested in their welfare and decided to trust his instincts. I would like that. Emma loves hot chocolate, so if the place serves that, she would be happy to come along. The next afternoon, Jake and Emma sat in a downtown coffee shop waiting for Victoria to arrive. When she appeared, she looked different from the rain-soaked woman they had met the night before. Her professional attire and confident bearing suggested someone accustomed to making important decisions. Jake, I need to be honest with you about something, Victoria began after they had ordered drinks. I am not just someone who runs a computer company. I am the CEO of Chen Technologies. We are one of the largest construction software companies in the country. Jake stared at her with growing understanding. You are a millionaire. I am, Victoria admitted, which makes what you did last night even more remarkable. You gave me your last $10 without knowing anything about my ability to pay you back. You were willing to walk home in the rain with your daughter rather than let a stranger go. Without help. Emma, who had been coloring on a placemat, looked up with interest. Does that mean you are really rich, Miss Victoria? Victoria smiled at the child's directness. Yes, Emma, I am very fortunate to have a lot of money. Then why did you need Daddy's help? Emma asked with genuine curiosity. Because sometimes the most important help has nothing to do with money, Victoria replied. Your daddy helped me? Remember that there are still good people in the world who care about others. She turned back to Jake. Jake, I have a proposition for you. My company is expanding our operations center, and we need someone to oversee the construction and facilities management. The position would involve supervising contractors, ensuring building safety, and managing the physical infrastructure of our offices. Jake felt his pulse quicken. Victoria, I appreciate the thought, but I do not have experience managing large projects. You have something more important than experience, Victoria replied. You have integrity. Last night you proved that you make decisions based on what is right, not what is convenient. That is exactly the kind of person I want managing projects for my company. She slid a piece of paper across the table. This is what the position pays, along with full benefits including health insurance and a college fund for Emma. Jake looked at the number on the paper and felt his breath catch. It was more than double what he had ever made in a year. Victoria, why would you do this for someone you just met? Victoria looked at Emma, who was now showing her the picture. She had colored, and then at Jake, who was trying to process this unexpected turn in his life. Because $10 should not be someone's last $10, she said simply. Because a man who gives away his last money to help a stranger is someone I want working for my company. And because Emma deserves to have a father who does not have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. 6 months later, Jake stood in his new office at Chen Technologies, reviewing plans for the company's latest building project. Emma was enrolled in an excellent school and had her own bedroom in their new apartment. But more than the financial security, Jake treasured the friendship that had developed between his small family and Victoria, who had become not just his employer, but one of his closest friends. Daddy, Emma said one evening as they had dinner with Victoria, remember when you gave Miss Victoria your last money on the train? I remember, Jake replied. I think that was the best money you ever spent, Emma said with the wisdom that sometimes comes from the mouths of children. Victoria smiled across the table at this father and daughter who had taught her that the most valuable investments are not always measured in dollars and cents. Emma, I think your daddy made the best deal of his life that night. He traded $10 for something worth far more than money. Sometimes the most important business transactions happen not in boardrooms, but on subway platforms, where a simple act of kindness can change the trajectory of multiple lives and prove that generosity is always the best investment we can make.